Emily Carter glanced at her wristwatch as she adjusted the stethoscope around her neck. 19 hours on duty, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her. Her eyes burned, her feet throbbed, and a dull ache pulsed in her back, unrelieved even by painkillers. But in the emergency room at New York General Hospital, rest wasn't an option, especially on rainy nights like this one. "Just 20 more minutes," she murmured, watching as an ambulance pulled up to the automatic doors. Fall in New York meant endless rain, and with it came accidents. Emily had long lost track of how many fractures she'd treated this week alone. Since graduating from medical school 5 years ago, the hospital had become her entire world. Holidays, birthdays, even dates, everything else took a back seat when lives were at stake. "Dr. Carter, there's another form for you to sign," said Nurse Lisa, handing her a clipboard. Emily sighed. "Of course. Has my last patient been discharged?" "Yes, his family picked him up." "You saved the day again." Comments like that kept Emily going, even when exhaustion threatened to take over. Many of her peers had chosen more lucrative specialties with predictable hours, but she had committed to emergency medicine. Chaotic, demanding, but deeply fulfilling. 20 blocks north, inside one of Manhattan's most exclusive skyscrapers, Nathan Holloway shut his laptop after yet another video call with international investors. His office on the 60th floor boasted a breathtaking view of the city, its lights blurred by the steady rain. The space, furnished with sleek modern decor and expensive artwork, radiated power and success. "Mr. Holloway, Victor Callahan is on the line," his secretary's voice came through the intercom. Nathan straightened his silk tie and ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Tell him I'll call back tomorrow. He insists it's urgent." "It always is," Nathan muttered, grabbing his Armani coat. "Tell him I'm heading to an appointment." At 38, Nathan had built a real estate empire, placing him among the most influential businessmen on the East Coast. He had transformed entire neighborhoods, his name regularly appearing in business magazines and society pages. Everything he touched turned to gold, or at least, that's what people believed. Emily wrapped up her paperwork, dreaming of her small bed in her shared Brooklyn apartment. Nathan slid into his Bentley, instructing his driver to take him to a high-end restaurant for a meeting with potential investors. The rain intensified, forming a curtain of water that seemed to separate their two vastly different worlds. Emily dedicated herself to saving lives, often at the expense of her own well-being. Nathan operated at the top, making decisions that shaped the lives of thousands, though he rarely faced the personal consequences of those choices. Their paths couldn't have been more different, but that was about to change in the most dramatic way possible. Emily had just started putting away her belongings in her locker when the ER doors suddenly burst open. "Doctor! We need a doctor here!" The receptionist's urgent voice echoed through the hall. Without hesitation, Emily rushed toward the commotion, exhaustion forgotten. A man staggered into the emergency entrance, clutching his abdomen. Blood seeped between his fingers, staining his expensive suit. His face was pale, his eyes wild with panic. Before anyone could react, he collapsed onto the floor, a pool of blood spreading beneath him, stark against the white hospital tiles. "Stretcher!" "No!" Emily shouted, kneeling beside him, pressing her fingers to his neck. There was still a pulse, weak but present. "Trauma room 1. As the team transferred the patient onto the stretcher, something slipped from his pocket, a golden access card. Emily picked it up, her eyes catching the engraved name of an elite office building. But it was the name printed on the card that made her breath hitch. Nathan Holloway. The storm raging outside was nothing compared to the one about to crash into Emily Carter's life. BP dropping, 80/50. Nurse Lisa called out. Emily's exhaustion no longer mattered. Her hands moved swiftly, methodically, as she fought to stabilize her patient. The ID card confirmed what the access card already suggested. Nathan Holloway was the man on her table. He was losing blood fast, the bullet wound in his lower abdomen, a serious threat. "Type and cross for 4 units, Emily ordered. "Get me an ultrasound. I need to check for internal bleeding." The trauma room buzzed with urgent activity as Emily worked, her focus razor-sharp. One life-saving decision after another, she fought to keep Nathan alive, unaware that this night would change both of their lives forever. Unlike the dramatic chaos often seen in TV medical dramas, real emergency medicine was a precise, well-coordinated effort. Every move mattered. Emily worked swiftly, her focus locked on the patient. "No exit wound," she noted, examining him carefully. "The bullet's still inside. Get CT ready and call surgery." As the team stabilized him, Emily spotted other concerning injuries: defensive wounds on his hands, bruises on his ribs, and a cut above his eyebrow. This wasn't just a shooting. He had been in a serious fight before he was shot. "Dr. Carter," a nurse whispered. "Should we call the police?" Emily hesitated for a brief moment. Protocol said yes, but something about the way he had stumbled into the hospital instead of arriving by ambulance made her pause. He was running from something, or someone. "Let's stabilize him first," she decided. "Then we'll make the call." 2 hours and 1 emergency surgery later, Nathan Holloway was stable but still unconscious in the recovery room. The bullet had been removed, narrowly missing vital organs, though he'd lost a significant amount of blood. Emily stood by his bedside, reviewing his chart. The surgical team had done an excellent job, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a random act of violence. "You should go home, Dr. Carter," Lisa said, appearing at her side. "Your shift ended 3 hours ago." Emily nodded but didn't move. "I want to be here when he wakes up." "That could be hours." "I know." Emily pulled up a chair. "I'll just rest my eyes for a bit." She hadn't meant to doze off, but exhaustion finally claimed her. It was the rustling of sheets that startled her awake. Dawn light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. Nathan Holloway was awake. His sharp green eyes darted around the room, filled with alarm. "You're in the hospital," Emily said gently, leaning forward. "You were shot, but you're going to be okay." His gaze settled on her, intense and assessing. "Who are you?" "Dr. Emily Carter. I treated you when you came in last night." He tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Easy," she warned. "You just had surgery to remove a bullet." "I need to leave," he said, his voice rough but firm. Emily frowned. "That's not possible. You lost a lot of blood. Your body needs time to recover." "You don't understand," he insisted, glancing toward the door. "It's not safe." "What happened to you, Mr. Holloway?" she asked. His eyes widened slightly at the use of his name. "Your access card fell out of your pocket," she explained. "We needed to identify you for the records." A flicker of emotion, fear, maybe even anger, crossed his face. "Did you call anyone?" "The police." "Not yet. Hospital protocol requires it for gunshot wounds, but I wanted to speak with you first." He seemed to relax slightly. "Thank you. But I need some answers," Emily pressed. "Who did this to you?" His expression darkened. "It's better if you don't know. I just saved your life. I think I deserve at least that much." Nathan studied her for a long moment, as if debating what to say. Finally, he sighed. "Someone I trusted turned out to be less than trustworthy." "That's pretty vague." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "It's all I can give you right now." Before Emily could respond, the door opened, and Lisa entered with a tray of medication. "Oh, you're awake," she said, surprised. "How are you feeling, Mr. Holloway?" "Like I've been shot," he replied dryly. Lisa smiled as she approached. "Dr. Carter hasn't left your side all night. She even slept in that uncomfortable chair." Emily felt her cheeks warm. "I was just doing my job." "Above and beyond, as usual," Lisa commented, administering his pain medication. "I'll let the attending know you're awake." After she left, silence settled over the room. Nathan finally spoke. "You stayed all night?" Emily shrugged. "I wanted to make sure you didn't crash. Plus, I had questions." "Which I haven't answered." "No, you haven't." He shifted slightly, wincing again. "I appreciate what you've done, Dr. Carter. Truly. But the less you know about me, the safer you'll be." "Is that a threat?" "A warning," he corrected. "There are people looking for me, and they won't be happy that I survived." Emily's medical instincts warred with her curiosity. "I need to report this, Mr. Holloway." "Nathan," he said. "And I understand. Just give me a few hours. Please." There was something in his eyes, vulnerability beneath the guarded exterior, that made Emily pause. Against her better judgment, she nodded. "Rest. I'll check on you later." As she left his room, Emily knew she was breaking protocol. Whatever trouble Nathan Holloway was in, she had just silently agreed to be a part of it. The question was, what had she just gotten herself into? At what cost? She glanced back through the window to see him staring after her, his expression unreadable. Something told her that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. When Emily returned to the hospital the next evening for her shift, the first thing she did was check on Nathan Holloway. She had tried to sleep during the day, but her mind kept returning to the mysterious man and his cryptic warning. "Lisa, how's the gunshot patient from last night?" she asked, trying to sound casual as she slipped on her white coat. Lisa looked up from the computer with a confused expression. "That's odd. I was just checking that." According to the system, he requested early discharge against medical advice. "What? That's impossible. He just had major surgery." "I know." Dr. Peterson apparently tried to talk him out of it, but he signed all the release forms, taking full responsibility. Emily felt a knot forming in her stomach. When did this happen? Around noon today. Without another word, Emily hurried to the recovery room where she had left Nathan. The bed was empty, freshly made with crisp sheets, as if no one had ever been there. On the small bedside table, partially tucked under the lamp, was a folded piece of paper. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching before picking it up. "Thank you for saving my life. I hope to return the favor one day, no signature." Just those two simple sentences written in precise, elegant script. Emily crumpled the note in her fist, feeling oddly betrayed. She had risked her professional reputation by delaying the police report, and he had simply disappeared without a proper explanation. "Everything okay?" Lisa appeared in the doorway. Emily quickly slipped the note into her pocket. "Fine. Just surprised he left so soon." Lisa shrugged. "Rich people. They think they know better than doctors." For the next 2 weeks, Emily threw herself into her work, trying to forget about Nathan Holloway. But sometimes, during quiet moments between emergencies, she would find herself wondering what had happened to him. Had he survived his reckless departure? Was he safe from whoever had tried to kill him? It was a particularly busy Friday when Emily finally got a chance to take a lunch break. The hospital cafeteria was crowded, so she decided to try the small bistro across the street that she had been meaning to visit for months. As soon as she entered, she was struck by the contrast to the hospital. Soft lighting, elegant decor, and the quiet murmur of business conversations rather than the beeping of medical equipment. This was clearly a place for Manhattan's elite, not usually frequented by medical staff in scrubs and comfortable shoes. "Table for one?" the hostess asked with a polite smile. "Yes, please." As Emily followed the hostess through the restaurant, her eyes scanned the room out of habit, a doctor's instinct to be aware of her surroundings. And then she saw him. Nathan Holloway sat at a corner table with two men in expensive suits. He looked completely different from the desperate, bleeding man who had stumbled into her ER. Now, he was perfectly groomed, commanding, dressed in what she guessed was a custom suit. There was no trace of the vulnerability she had witnessed. Emily froze, causing the hostess to turn back with a questioning look. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Before Emily could respond, Nathan looked up. Their eyes met across the room, and she saw his expression shift from relaxed to stunned in an instant. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, with a whispered excuse to his companions, he stood and made his way toward her. "Dr. Carter," he said, his voice lower and more controlled than she remembered. "Mr. Holloway, I see you've made a remarkable recovery." A flash of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed his face. "I owe you an explanation." "You don't owe me anything," Emily replied coolly, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked in her hospital scrubs. "I was just doing my job. Please join me for lunch. You seem busy." She nodded toward his table, where the two men were watching them with disguised curiosity. "They can wait. I insist." Against her better judgment, again, Emily found herself being led to a small table near the window, far from Nathan's business associates. "You shouldn't have left the hospital," she said once they were seated. "You could have developed complications, infections. That bullet wound was serious." "I had private medical care arranged," he replied. "I couldn't stay at the hospital. It wasn't safe." Emily leaned forward. "What kind of trouble are you in exactly?" Nathan studied her for a moment before answering. "I'm in real estate development. Sometimes that means making enemies. Enemies who shoot you and leave you for dead. New York can be a cutthroat place. His attempt at humor fell flat. This isn't a joke, Nathan. Someone tried to kill you. He seemed surprised by her use of his first name. Nathan leaned back slightly, watching Emily's reaction closely. She was clearly processing everything, her expression shifting from disbelief to concern. "Are you saying I was being watched?" she asked, keeping her voice steady but low. Nathan nodded. "It's possible. Victor doesn't leave loose ends. If he suspects you know something, even unintentionally, he might see you as a problem." Emily exhaled slowly. "I don't know anything about your business. I was just doing my job." "I know," Nathan said, his tone softer. "But Victor isn't the type to take risks. He'll want to make sure you don't become one." Emily's mind raced. She had treated plenty of patients in critical condition before, but none had ever pulled her into something like this. "So what do I do now? Go to the police?" she asked. Nathan hesitated before answering. "If Victor has people watching, I wouldn't. Not yet. If they think you're a threat, going to the police might only confirm it." Emily frowned. "So what then? Pretend this never happened and hope they forget about me?" Nathan leaned in, his gaze serious. "I need time to fix this, to make sure you're not in danger. Until then, be careful. If anything seems off, call me immediately." Emily huffed a quiet laugh. "Call you? I don't even have your number." Nathan pulled a small card from his pocket and slid it across the table. "Now you do." She picked it up, glancing at the number written neatly in ink. A strange mix of emotions stirred in her: frustration, concern, curiosity. "I don't like being caught up in other people's messes, Mr. Holloway." Nathan smirked slightly. "Neither do I, Dr. Carter. But here we are." She studied him for a moment, then sighed, slipping the card into her pocket. "Just stay out of trouble. I'd rather not have to patch you up again." Nathan chuckled, though there was something almost regretful in his eyes. "I'll do my best." Emily stood, suddenly feeling the weight of the conversation. "I have to get back to work." Nathan nodded. "Stay safe, Emily." As she left the restaurant, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that her life had just taken a turn she wasn't prepared for. And the worst part? She wasn't sure if she wanted to turn back. As Emily glanced back through the window, she saw Nathan watching her, his expression unreadable. Something in her gut told her that her life had just become far more complicated. The next evening, as soon as Emily arrived for her shift, she went straight to check on Nathan Holloway. She had tried to rest during the day, but her mind kept circling back to him and his cryptic warning. "Lisa, how's the gunshot patient from last night?" she asked, slipping on her white coat, trying to sound casual. Lisa frowned at the computer screen. "That's strange. I was just looking at his chart. According to the system, he discharged himself early. Against medical advice." Emily froze. "That's impossible. He just had major surgery." "I know." Dr. Peterson tried to talk him out of it, but he signed all the forms taking full responsibility. A knot tightened in Emily's stomach. "When did this happen?" "Around noon today." Without another word, Emily hurried to the recovery room. The bed was empty, the sheets freshly made as if no one had ever been there. On the bedside table, partially tucked under the lamp, was a folded piece of paper. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching, before picking it up. "Thank you for saving my life. I hope to return the favor one day." No signature. Just those simple words in precise, elegant handwriting. Emily crumpled the note in her fist, feeling an unexpected sting of betrayal. She had risked bending protocol for him, and he had vanished without a real explanation. "Everything okay?" Lisa asked, appearing in the doorway. Emily quickly slipped the note into her pocket. "Fine. Just surprised he left so soon." Lisa shrugged. "Rich people. They think they know better than doctors." For the next 2 weeks, Emily buried herself in work, trying to push Nathan from her thoughts. But in quiet moments, between emergencies, she wondered. Had he survived his reckless departure? Was he safe from whoever had tried to kill him? It was a particularly hectic Friday when she finally had a chance to step away for lunch. The hospital cafeteria was packed, so she decided to try the small bistro across the street, somewhere she had meant to visit for months. Soon as she stepped inside, the atmosphere felt worlds away from a hospital. Dim lighting, elegant decor, and the murmur of quiet conversation replaced the usual beeping of medical equipment. It was clearly a place for Manhattan's elite, not a spot frequented by doctors in scrubs. "Table for one?" the hostess asked with a polite smile. "Yes, please." As Emily followed her through the restaurant, her eyes scanned the room out of habit. And then she saw him. Nathan Holloway sat in a corner booth with two men in expensive suits. He looked completely different from the injured man who had stumbled into her ER. Now, he was composed, commanding, dressed in what was surely a custom suit. The vulnerability she had seen in him before was gone. Emily stopped in her tracks, her breath catching. The hostess turned back. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" Before she could answer, Nathan looked up. Their eyes met, and his relaxed expression turned to one of pure shock. For a brief moment, neither of them moved. Then, after a quick word to his companions, he stood and walked toward her. "Dr. Carter," he said in a calm, controlled voice. "Mr. Holloway," she replied evenly. "I see you've made a remarkable recovery." A flicker of guilt crossed his face. "I owe you an explanation." "You don't owe me anything," she said, suddenly self-conscious about her scrubs in this upscale setting. "I was just doing my job. Please, have lunch with me." She glanced toward his table, where the two men were watching them with veiled curiosity. "You seem busy. They can wait." "I insist." Against her better judgment, she let him lead her to a table near the window, away from his associates. "You shouldn't have left the hospital," she said the moment they were seated. "You could have developed complications. That bullet wound was serious." "I had private medical care arranged," he replied smoothly. "Staying at the hospital wasn't safe." Emily leaned forward. "What kind of trouble are you in, exactly?" Nathan studied her for a long moment. "I'm in real estate development. Sometimes that means making enemies." "Enemies who shoot you?" she asked skeptically. "New York can be a cutthroat place," he said with a wry smile. "This isn't a joke, Nathan. Someone tried to kill you." "I know," he admitted, his expression turning serious. "And they might not be finished." Emily's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Nathan glanced around, lowering his voice. "After I left the hospital, two of Victor Callahan's men showed up there." Emily stiffened. "Who?" "Victor Callahan. My former business partner. The man who wants me dead." A chill ran through her. "And why were his men at the hospital?" "They were asking about me. Specifically, they asked about you." Emily's grip tightened around her napkin. "I spoke to two men who claimed they were your relatives. I told them nothing." Nathan's jaw tensed. "I have no family. Those men work for Victor. They were there to finish what they started." Emily swallowed hard. "Then why didn't they?" "The hospital isn't exactly a fortress. Too public. Too many witnesses. They prefer clean, isolated incidents that look like accidents or robberies gone wrong." She put down her fork, her appetite gone. "So what happens now? Am I in danger just because I treated you?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "But I wanted to warn you. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't take the same route home every day. And if anyone asks about me, you treated a gunshot victim who never regained consciousness." Her medical instincts kicked in, elevated heart rate, hypervigilance. The rest of her was still struggling to process how her ordinary life had collided with something so dangerous. "I should go to the police." "You could," Nathan said. "But Victor has connections. Without concrete proof, it'd be your word against his. And he'd know exactly who pointed them in his direction." Emily exhaled sharply. "You trust me? A stranger?" "You saved my life when you could have just called the cops," he said simply. "And you're still here, listening, instead of walking away. So yes, cautiously, I trust you." Their conversation ended with a heavy silence. As they stood to leave, Nathan handed her a business card. "My private number is on the back. If you notice anything unusual, Anyone following you, strange calls, contact me immediately. Emily slipped it into her pocket. And what are you going to do? Gather the last pieces of evidence. But I have to be careful. As she stepped outside, the busy Manhattan street suddenly felt different. Suspicious. Dangerous. Every stranger, every idling car seemed like a potential threat. Be careful, Dr. Carter, Nathan said. I'll be in touch. As she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her. And she knew this wasn't over. Lisa watched Emily closely as they prepared for their shift. You seem distracted lately. Everything okay? Emily forced a smile. Just tired. Been picking up extra shifts. Lisa shook her head. You work too hard. You should come out with us this weekend. A bunch of us are going to that new club in the meatpacking district. Maybe, Emily replied non-committally, knowing she'd decline later. Social outings felt like unnecessary risks now. That night, the ER was packed. A multi-car accident had brought in several critical patients, and Emily moved from one trauma room to another with practiced efficiency. It was nearly midnight when she finally got a chance to catch her breath. Dr. Carter, the unit secretary, called as Emily updated a patient chart. There's a delivery for you at the front desk. Puzzled, Emily walked to the reception area, where a courier in a uniform stood waiting with a small package. Emily Carter, he asked. That's me. Sign here, please. The package was a plain manila envelope with no return address. Once alone in the break room, Emily opened it. Inside was a single USB drive and a note. Watch this alone. Destroy afterward. Her heart pounded. She should turn this over to the police immediately. Whatever Nathan was involved in, she wanted no part of it. And yet, she slipped the envelope into her locker, pushing the thought aside to focus on her remaining patients. 3 hours later, at the end of her shift, she retrieved the package and hurried to her car. The streets of New York were never truly empty, but at this hour, they were as quiet as they ever got. Emily kept checking her rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following her. Once inside her Brooklyn apartment, she double-locked the door, drew the blinds, and connected the USB drive to her laptop. A single video file appeared. Emily hesitated, her cursor hovering over it. Was she really going to do this? By watching, was she making herself a part of something dangerous? Taking a deep breath, she clicked play. The footage was from a security camera in an underground parking garage, time-stamped 3 weeks ago, the night before Nathan showed up in her ER. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, Nathan appeared, walking toward his car. 2 men approached him from behind, their body language tense. Even without sound, Emily could tell they were threatening him. Nathan turned, defensive. Words were exchanged. Then, one of the men pulled out a gun. Nathan lunged, struggling with the armed man. The gun went off. The second man jumped in, landing blows to Nathan's ribs and face. Emily winced, recalling the bruises she'd seen when she treated him. Despite being outnumbered, Nathan managed to break free and run. The gunman fired again. Nathan stumbled but kept moving until he disappeared from view. The video ended, replaced by a series of photographs. They showed the 2 attackers meeting with Victor Callahan in what looked like a private club. In one image, Callahan handed them an envelope. Then, a text document opened on the screen. These men work for Victor. The taller one is James Mercer, ex-military. The other is Derek Lowe, former enforcer for the Costello crime family. Both have been on Victor's payroll for 2 years. I'm sharing this so you understand the danger. Tell no one about our meeting. Emily stared at the screen, feeling sick. The evidence was undeniable. Nathan's story was true. Someone had tried to kill him, and it all led back to his business partner. Following Nathan's instructions, she ejected the USB drive and destroyed it, snapping it in half and running it under hot water until the components separated. Sleep was impossible after that. Emily sat by her window, watching the sky lighten as dawn approached. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Did you receive my package? Please confirm you're safe. Emily stared at the message. How did Nathan get her number? The hospital, probably. He seemed to have resources everywhere I got it. I'm fine. 3 dots appeared. Then, I'm sorry to involve you, but you needed to know. Emily hesitated before replying. Those men, have they been looking for me? The response was quick. Not yet. But Victor is getting desperate. I'm close to gathering all the evidence I need to bring him down. When? She typed. Soon. 1 week, maybe 2. Until then, we should keep our distance, for your safety. Emily hesitated, then asked, why did you really send me that video? Several minutes passed before a reply appeared, because I keep thinking about our lunch. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night in the ER. Because I feel responsible for putting you at risk. Because I wanted to see you again, but I can't right now. The unexpected honesty caught her off guard. Before she could think of a response, another message appeared. Delete this conversation. I'll contact you when it's over. Emily did as instructed, though something inside her rebelled against following orders so easily. Orders from a man she barely knew. Still, the images from the video were burned into her memory. The violence, the desperation in Nathan's eyes as he fought for his life. Later that morning, as Emily finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, her last thought was that she needed to stay away from Nathan Holloway and his dangerous world. But fate had other plans. The hospital cafeteria hummed with its usual lunchtime energy as Emily picked at her salad. 5 days had passed since she received the USB drive, and each day had been a careful exercise in paranoia. She had started paying closer attention to faces, noticing details, a lingering gaze, a person appearing in too many places, the same car parked on her street twice in 1 week. You look like you haven't slept in days, Lisa said, sliding into the seat across from her. What's going on with you lately? Emily pushed her food around with her fork. Just stressed, you know how it is. Lisa wasn't convinced. This is more than work stress. You've been jumpy, distracted. Is someone bothering you? An ex or something? Nothing like that, Emily assured her, forcing a smile. I promise I'm fine. Well, you should know that people are talking. Dr. Peterson mentioned you've been requesting different exit routes from the hospital. Security noticed. Emily felt a flash of alarm. She hadn't realized her precautions had been so obvious. I just like the variety, she said weakly. Lisa leaned forward, lowering her voice. Emily, if you're in some kind of trouble. I'm not, Emily interrupted, more sharply than intended. Seeing Lisa's hurt expression, she softened her tone. Really, I'm just dealing with some personal stuff. Nothing serious. Before Lisa could respond, Emily's pager buzzed. Saved by the bell, she muttered, checking the message. Multiple trauma coming in. I have to go. The emergency turned out to be a 3-car pileup on the Brooklyn Bridge, and Emily was grateful for the distraction. For 6 straight hours, she worked with laser focus, her mind occupied only with the patients in front of her. It was past 8 p.m. when the last victim was stabilized and transferred to surgery. Exhausted but satisfied, she retreated to the doctor's lounge. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Turn on the news. Frowning, Emily grabbed the remote and switched on the small TV in the lounge. The screen displayed a breaking news banner. Prominent developer Victor Callahan arrested on multiple charges. The news anchor's voice filled the room. In a shocking development tonight, real estate mogul Victor Callahan was taken into custody by federal agents. Sources say the charges include money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The arrest follows damning evidence provided by an anonymous source. Emily stared at the screen, her heart pounding. It was happening. Nathan had done it. He had brought down Victor Callahan. Her phone chimed again. It's over. Can we meet? Emily hesitated. Logic told her that staying involved with Nathan Holloway was a terrible idea. But another part of her, a part she wasn't ready to analyze too closely, wanted to see him again. When and where? She typed back. Tonight, 11 p.m. The rooftop bar at the Shelton. Ask for the private table. Emily glanced at her watch. If she left soon, she could make it. But should she? With Callahan arrested, was the danger really gone? Her fingers moved before she could second-guess herself. I'll be there. After finishing her shift, Emily went home to shower and change. She stood before her closet, suddenly self-conscious. This wasn't a date, she reminded herself. This was... what exactly? A debriefing? An ending? She settled on a simple black dress, elegant enough for the Shelton, but not so formal as to imply anything beyond a conversation between two people linked by extraordinary circumstances. The Shelton was one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels, its rooftop bar offering breathtaking views of the city skyline. As instructed, Emily asked for the private table and was led past the bustling main area to a secluded corner, partially hidden by decorative greenery. Nathan stood as she approached, looking more at ease than she had ever seen him. The constant tension in his posture seemed lighter, though not entirely gone. "You came," he said, a note of surprise in his voice. "I was curious," Emily replied, taking the seat opposite him. "Congratulations are in order. I saw the news." Nathan nodded, a ghost of a smile crossing his lips. "It worked. All the evidence is now with the FBI. Victor won't be able to buy his way out of this one. So it's really over. Mostly. There will be trials, testimony. But the immediate danger has passed." A server appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. "Mr. Holloway thought we might be celebrating," she said, setting them down. Once they were alone again, Nathan raised his glass. "To new beginnings." Emily clinked her glass against his, but didn't drink. "I have questions first. I expected nothing less from you, Dr. Carter." "Emily," she corrected him. "I think after everything, we can use first names." He tested it out. "Emily." She nodded. "Why did you come to my hospital that night? There are closer emergency rooms to where the attack happened." Nathan set his glass down. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was losing blood, disoriented. But I knew Victor had connections at Mount Sinai and New York Presbyterian. Your hospital seemed safer. And those men who came looking for you? Victor's last desperate attempt to find me. When they failed, he became more cautious. That's why I thought you would be safe as long as we stayed apart." Emily took a small sip of champagne, considering his words. Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing as she processed everything. "So, what happens now, Nathan?" she asked. Nathan exhaled, his gaze locking onto hers. "Now, I rebuild my company, my reputation, my life." He hesitated for a moment before continuing, his voice softer. "And I'd also like to properly thank the doctor who saved me, if she'll let me." There was no denying the connection between them. Emily had felt it from their very first real conversation back in that hospital room. But was attraction enough to bridge the gap between their vastly different lives? "I'm not sure that's a good idea," she admitted, choosing her words carefully. "Our worlds are just very different." Nathan didn't miss a beat. "They don't have to be. Not completely. I think we could find some common ground, if you're willing to try." The city lights shimmered in the distance, an ever-present reminder that life moved on, no matter the chaos. Their lives had been turned upside down, yet here they were, sitting together, contemplating something new. Emily took a slow sip of her drink before answering. "One dinner. A real one. No murder plots, no USB drives, no cryptic text messages. Just 2 people getting to know each other." Nathan's smile was warm, genuine. "I'd like that." As their glasses clinked again, Emily couldn't help but wonder, was she making a terrible mistake, or stepping into something extraordinary? Only time would tell. 1 month after Victor Callahan's arrest, Emily found herself staring into her bathroom mirror, frowning at her reflection. Tonight would be her 4th dinner with Nathan, but this one felt different. It was more than just another evening out. Tonight, he was inviting her into his home. A line they hadn't crossed before. "It's just dinner," she told her reflection, smoothing down her dress. But she knew better. Their previous dates had been carefully planned. A charming French bistro, a cozy jazz club, a late-night walk through Central Park followed by coffee at a small, hidden-away cafe. Each time, Nathan had been engaging, attentive, and surprisingly grounded for a man who owned half a dozen skyscrapers. Against all odds, Emily found herself warming to him. Beneath the polished exterior of Nathan Holloway, the real estate mogul was a man of unexpected depth. A man who volunteered at children's hospitals. A man with a genuine passion for architecture. A man who could quote obscure medical journals simply because he liked to understand things. Her phone buzzed with a message. "Waiting downstairs whenever you're ready." No rush. Of course, he'd sent a car. With a final glance in the mirror, Emily grabbed her purse and headed out. The sleek black sedan pulled up to one of Manhattan's most prestigious addresses. As the elevator ascended to the penthouse, her stomach fluttered with nerves. When the doors opened, she stepped directly into his apartment, and the sheer luxury of it nearly took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered an unmatched view of the city skyline. Modern furniture in muted tones filled the space, and original artwork lined the walls. It was a home that screamed power and success, yet it didn't feel cold or impersonal. Nathan appeared from the kitchen, a casual confidence in his movements. He wore dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice warm. Emily took in her surroundings. "This place is incredible." Nathan shrugged, helping her with her coat. "It's just a space. But I'm glad you like it." He led her to the open kitchen, where multiple pots simmered on the stove. The delicious aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air. Emily raised an eyebrow. "You cook?" Nathan chuckled. "Don't sound so surprised. I wasn't born into all of this, you know. I grew up in Queens. Single mom, worked 3 jobs. I learned to cook out of necessity." Emily hadn't expected that. In all their time together, Nathan had always focused on the present, rarely speaking about his past. "You never mentioned that before," she noted, accepting the glass of wine he offered. "Not much to tell," he said with a shrug. "Classic rags to riches story. Scholarship kid. Worked hard. Got lucky. Made good." He stirred the sauce in front of him, then turned to her with a smile. "But tonight isn't about my boring past. How was your day?" Emily leaned against the counter, taking a small sip of wine. "Busy. 3 car accidents, 1 construction injury, and a kid who thought it would be fun to jump off his garage roof." Nathan kept a straight face. "Could he?" Emily couldn't help but smile. "Not even close. A broken arm and a valuable life lesson." Dinner was served on the terrace. Handmade pasta with a sauce Nathan claimed was his mother's recipe, paired with an expensive wine. Emily did her best to appreciate it, even if she wasn't quite the wine expert Nathan was. The conversation flowed effortlessly, shifting from hospital stories to Nathan's latest building project to a playful debate about whether New York pizza was truly superior to Chicago deep dish. Tea wasn't until dessert, a rich chocolate mousse Nathan sheepishly admitted he'd bought from a patisserie, that the conversation took a more serious turn. "The FBI called me today," Nathan said, his expression darkening. "Victor's trial starts next month. They want me to testify." Emily set down her spoon. "How do you feel about that?" "Conflicted," he admitted. "Part of me wants to see him face justice. Another part just wants to move on." He looked out at the city lights, his jaw tightening. "Our company was more than just business. Victor was like a brother to me for 10 years. It's okay to feel betrayed," Emily said gently. "Trust isn't given lightly, especially not by someone like you." Nathan turned his gaze back to her. "Someone like me?" "Someone who calculates risks, who plans 10 steps ahead," she replied. "I imagine you don't let many people get close enough to hurt you." He studied her for a long moment. "You see a lot, Emily Carter. It's what makes me a good doctor." Nathan hesitated, then asked, "And what about us? What do you see here?" Emily felt her pulse quicken. "I see 2 people from very different worlds who somehow collided. I see potential, but also complications." "Yes," he agreed. "Your life is focused, contained. You save one life at a time. I build empires." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. "Maybe that's exactly why this works. We balance each other." Before Emily could respond, Nathan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowning. "I should take this, it's my security team." Emily nodded as he stepped away. His expression darkened as he listened, his posture stiffening with each passing second. "Are you certain?" he demanded. "Increase security at all properties immediately. And send someone to Dr. Carter's apartment building." Emily stood as he ended the call. "What's happening?" Nathan turned to her, the easygoing demeanor from earlier completely gone. "James Mercer and Derek Lowe, the men who attacked me, they've been released on bail pending trial." Emily's stomach dropped. "How? After everything they did?" Their attorney convinced the judge they were minor players in Victor's operation. Someone posted their bail. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "Victor." Nathan shook his head. Impossible. His assets are frozen, and he's being held without bail. A chill ran down her spine. Then who? That's what worries me, Nathan admitted. He moved closer, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. Emily, I think you should stay here tonight. Just as a precaution. Warning bells rang in her mind, not about Nathan, but about the situation. The safety she'd felt over the past month had been an illusion. You think they might come after me? I don't know, he said honestly. But Victor knew we had lunch that day. If he's somehow pulling strings from jail... Emily exhaled slowly, weighing her options. Okay, I'll stay. Nathan's relief was visible. Thank you. I'll have security bring some of your things from your apartment. As Nathan made arrangements, Emily stood by the window, staring out at the city. Just hours ago, she believed this new chapter with Nathan could unfold without the shadow of danger hanging over them. How wrong she had been. Emily couldn't sleep. Nathan had offered her the guest bedroom, a gesture she appreciated, but silk sheets and a memory foam mattress did little to calm her racing thoughts. After tossing and turning for 2 hours, she finally gave up and wandered into the dimly lit apartment. The city lights cast shifting shadows across the walls, the skyline sprawling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows like a glittering maze. Somewhere out there, 2 men who had tried to kill Nathan were free again. Can't sleep either. Emily turned to see Nathan standing in the hallway, dressed casually in pajama pants and a t-shirt. Without his usual tailored suits, he seemed more real, more human. Too much on my mind, she admitted. Nathan stepped beside her at the window. I'm sorry about dinner. This wasn't how I planned our night to go. Nathan exhaled sharply, his voice carrying a trace of frustration. This isn't your fight, but somehow, you're in the middle of it. Emily turned to face him, her expression steady. I'm not a bystander, Nathan. I make my own choices. I chose to help you that night in the ER. I chose to meet you for lunch. And I chose to be here tonight. His gaze locked onto hers in the dim light. Why? It was a simple question, yet the answer was anything but. Why had she stayed, despite the risks and their vastly different lives? Then, in a moment of clarity, it came to her. Because when I'm with you, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time, alive, challenged, seen. She took a deep breath. Because you don't just see Dr. Carter. You see me. Emily. Nathan stepped closer, his hand brushing gently against her cheek. I've seen you from the start. The kiss that followed was inevitable, a culmination of everything simmering between them since that first moment in the hospital. Emily melted into it, her hands finding his shoulders, then his neck. Nathan pulled her closer, his arms encircling her waist. When they finally parted, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he murmured. Not because of any danger, just because I want you here. Emily nodded. Words weren't needed as he took her hand and led her to his room. In the quiet darkness, they found comfort in each other, their connection deepening with every touch, every whispered word. For those few hours, there was no danger, no complications, only them. The sound of Nathan's phone buzzing woke Emily at dawn. She watched as he answered, his back tensing. How did they get in? His voice was sharp, edged with concern. Yes, I understand. Increase security immediately. I'll be there soon. He turned to Emily, his expression grim. There was a break-in at my office last night. Nothing was stolen, but my assistant found this on my desk this morning. He held up his phone, showing her a photo of a white card with 3 words written in elegant script. Not over yet. Chill ran through her. Their brief sanctuary had already shattered. I have to go, Nathan said, already getting dressed. I need to meet with security, review the footage. Emily nodded. I understand. I have a shift at noon anyway. As Nathan left, Emily wrapped the sheets tighter around herself, unable to shake the feeling that their moment of peace had been just that. A fleeting moment. 2 days after the break-in, Emily moved through the hospital halls, her mind split between her patients and the recent events. Security around Nathan had been tightened, and he had insisted on providing protection for her as well. A discreet guard now followed her at a distance, even during her shifts. Dr. Carter. She turned to see Dr. Patricia Weber, the department head. Could we talk in the director's office? Emily sat down, nerves creeping in. Had her recent distraction been noticed? Weber smiled. I received news from Seattle Grace. They've approved your transfer. The position of emergency coordinator is yours, if you still want it. Emily's heart pounded. The Seattle position, the opportunity she had worked toward for years. Before Nathan, the decision would have been easy. Thank you, Emily said carefully. When do they need my answer? By the end of the week, Weber said. This is an extraordinary opportunity, Emily. You deserve it. Readers, I hope you've enjoyed following Emily and Nathan's thrilling journey, a story of danger, passion, and difficult choices. If you were in Emily's shoes, would you chase your career dreams or follow your heart? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this romantic thriller kept you on edge, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories. Also, where are you watching from? Let us know. We'd love to see how far Emily and Nathan's story has traveled.